See, I'm paying you back for the 3 in a row. Actually, I'm going to read a very quick little bit from Channeling Mark Twain, which is a novel of mine that just came out. This is actually a little exercise we do in creative writing sometimes called Where I Come From. And the main character, who is a poet who happens to be from Minnesota, where I'm from, whose mother recited poetry when she was growing up, just as my mother did when I was growing up. I guess we could call this semi-autobiographical. I should mention that today would have been my father's, 90th birthday? And he knew some poems by heart, too. Dad did. My brother's here tonight and his family. But my mother was of that last generation that we talked about, who they took elocution in school. They learned poems by heart and odes and addresses like the Gettysburg. Anyway, she knew pages and continues to know. She's 91, pages and pages of poetry by heart. But people then quoted, what they called quoted, so that if you were standing in line at the grocery store or something, and you quoted something, other people would nod and say, yes, that's from Milton, like my mother saying to me if I would roll my eyes standing in line at the grocery store. They also serve who only stand and wait, my mother would say to me, from Milton's sonnet on his blindness. People around would know that, and they'd say, yes, Milton's sonnet on his blindness. And she would say, if I didn't want to eat my spinach or something, how like a serpent's tooth, an ungrateful child, which is, from King Lear. In the morning, it would be 40 degrees below zero in Minnesota, snow up to the height of the roof, and she would appear in my bedroom doorway when I was burrowing down under the quilts, not wanting to get up, saying, let us be up and doing with a heart for any fate. It drove my father a little crazy, as I recall, but she hasn't stopped quoting to this day. And they don't, that ability, I really believe in that ability, and as we've been talking a little bit about it here tonight and celebrating those poems, which really are the poems that beat with your heart and run in your blood, those poems embody, I think, all that we love about poetry. So this is the exercise, getting back to that. This is the exercise called Where I Come From. Typically, in a creative writing class, you try to get the person, the student, to write something about not literally where he or she is from, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, or whatever it is, but what the source of the imagination is, what the source of imaginative thinking is. So this is a little passage from Channeling Mark Twain called the Where I Come From exercise. I come from the prairie and the north woods. My parents, children of the Dakotas, children of that huge, mindless sky going nowhere. Red depression glass in the china cupboards, a vellum-bound anthology of poems in my hands, willed to me. I come from thwarted dreams, amended expectations, their 2-year college instead of his law degree, her literature degree, her ambition to be a writer, but their gradual ascent to the middle class, then a little higher, in the city to which they'd moved after marrying, the city where I was born, named for the saint struck by lightning, St. Paul. His real estate business, their children, 6 in all, her tears, her furious face, her recitations of poems like pure seizures of delight and alarm, her declamations condemning all that she found inhibiting or pretentious. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediment, but impediment there was. No one knew her mind, she cried, the world was too much with us. I came from growing up thinking that she was beauty remade through loss as truth. I come from thinking myself religious than knowing I was not in the way of the so-called holy book. Who made me? Longing made me. Longing and wonder, those entwined gods, Blake's universe. I come from Fritos in a clear glass bowl, hard candies, sour balls in a fluted red dish, cleats on Oxford shoes, black hockey tape, and padded shin guards and skates on the scarred mudroom floor, icicles, roof-high snow, wet, scratchy wool scarves drawn ice-tight over the mouth and nose like purdah veils, protecting the lungs against 40 below temperatures. I come from mowed lawns and barbecues and rec rooms, from lake cabins, water skis, speedboats, and poppy seed kolache cake, buttered figured scrolls of krumkaka, popovers, lutefisk, lefse, Oli and Lena jokes, Czech self-deprecation, Norwegian stolidness, oyster stew on Christmas Eve. I come from defying the Baltimore Catechism, then the index of forbidden books, reading, though not understanding, Boccaccio's Decameron. From the notorious but get-it-right tutelage of nuns, from John Keats, that pagan poet, read at night in my bed by flashlight. I come from alliance with my Jewish neighbors, the Golds, who moved in next door after the neighborhood voted on their presence on Pascal Street. I come from babysitting their children, then later sitting at their dinner table. I come from those shouting, debate-filled meals, learning from those exchanges to have an opinion, to think on my feet. I come from waving to Mr. Gold, the kosher butcher, as he stayed up late every night reading as I read, my bedroom window across from their kitchen window where he sat turning pages till 3 a.m., his hand lifted in response, his kind smile and tired lidded eyes, the thick book open under yellow light. I come from that comradely figure reading till dawn in the window, the same window where the candles were carefully lit on Friday nights. I come from wanting to be a Jew. I come from Christmas, the holiday for which I was named. Carried home in a swaddled bundle on Christmas Eve, little Holly Ann laid down under the spreading boughs, how I stood reciting, singing carols before that magical tree year after year. I come from understanding that one can be named for something larger than the self. I come from prairie, woods, twin cities. The Mississippi is divided as I am divided into dust storms in untouched plains of snow. Bad jokes and Keats, a babysitter's Judaica and the lives of the saints, all of my life divided into fear and unbelieving joy. And through it all, that voice, her voice, reciting the canon of poems. She sang of arms and the man, fruit of the tree and man's fall, of a flower in a cranny wall, of death who would kindly stop for me, of the village smithy, of O Captain, my captain, and the children's hour, laughing Allegra, of Hiawatha, laughing waters, and one if by land, two if by sea, the highwayman riding up to the old inn door, the moon a ghostly galleon, its light filled with the sorrows of her changing face, wandering lonely as a cloud. That's where I began, that cloud, that wandering. Oh, that's where I come from. I come from that.